The judge unfolded the sealed envelope containing my father's will. The courtroom fell silent, except for the soft shuffle of papers. Across from me, my husband Ethan Carter sat, his designer suit immaculate. A smug smile stretched across his face. He believed he had won everything. He thought he understood me, my family, and the value of what I possessed. But as the judge began reading aloud, I saw his confidence crumble, piece by piece. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel for more stories. It really helps us grow. Also, comment below which country you're watching from. My name is Olivia, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people who underestimate you the most are the ones closest to you. 3 years ago, I was not the woman I am today. I was married to Ethan Carter, a highly successful investment banker whom everyone admired as the ideal husband. He was charming, well-educated, and came from a wealthy, influential family. We met at a charity gala in Seattle, where I was a high school English teacher, struggling to make ends meet after my father's death the previous year. Ethan swept me off my feet with lavish gifts and extravagant dinners. He made me feel as though I was living inside a storybook. Within 5 months, he proposed with a ring worth more than my annual income. I said yes, convinced I had found my prince. But fairy tales, I learned, do not always have happy endings. The trouble began subtly. Ethan would make small, dismissive comments about my profession. He would call it cute that I dedicated my life to teaching children. He laughed at my pride in students' achievements, treating them as trivial compared to his corporate deals. When I spoke about furthering my education to become a principal, he would pat my head and say, "Why overwork yourself when I can take care of both of us?" Initially, I believed he was protective. I didn't realize he was controlling. After we married, the remarks escalated. He invited colleagues to our home for dinner, and when asked about my work, he would say, "Oh, Olivia's just a teacher. She keeps busy while I handle the important stuff." His tone made my chest tighten every time. I began to shrink inside my own home. When I tried joining discussions about current events or finance, he would interrupt, "Sweetheart, let the adults talk." His friends would laugh. I would excuse myself to the kitchen, swallowing my pride along with my words. The worst part was how he disrespected my father's memory. My father had died of a heart condition when I was 26, and it left a deep void. He was a humble maintenance supervisor at a local factory, unwealthy, uncelebrated, but a man of immense kindness and integrity. Ethan never missed a chance to remind me of my modest background. He would say things like, "It's fine your dad was a blue-collar worker. Not everyone can succeed like my family." When I grew emotional, missing my dad, he would sigh and mutter, "Olivia, move on. Clinging to the past won't improve your life." But my father had taught me a lesson Ethan never grasped. A person's worth is not measured by money or title, but by character, compassion, and the positive mark they leave on the world. 2 years into our marriage, Ethan's true nature became undeniable. He came home later each night, citing endless meetings. His phone constantly buzzed, and he would retreat into another room to answer, avoiding my questions about his day. Romantic gestures disappeared. Fancy dinners were replaced with silent microwave meals. The man who once couldn't keep his hands off me barely looked my way. I felt a growing sense of dread, but kept rationalizing it. He was stressed. I threw myself into teaching, tutoring students, staying late for extracurriculars. At school, I felt respected and needed. My students cared about me, not my wealth. One student, Lily, struggled with family issues and falling grades. I spent hours helping her catch up. When she earned a scholarship to her dream college, she hugged me tightly. "Miss Olivia, you changed my life. You never gave up on me." Moments like these reminded me of my true self, beyond Ethan's constant put-downs. At home, I felt invisible. Ethan had convinced me I was lucky to have him, that no one else would desire a simple teacher from a modest background. He would say, "Be grateful I saw potential in you despite your origins." Slowly, I started to believe him. The breaking point came one Tuesday evening in May. I returned from a parent-teacher meeting, elated from helping a struggling student's family plan their child's future. I found Ethan in his study, laughing on the phone. "Trust me, Jason, she has no clue. She is so naive. She thinks I married her for love."
He went on detailing how he had prepared a prenup, planned to take everything in our divorce, and even manipulated me into signing over my father's property as mortgage collateral. My world shattered in the doorway. I backed away slowly from the study doorway, my heart pounding so violently I felt it might leap out of my chest. Everything suddenly made sense. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the relentless pressure to sign document after document for our future. Ethan had been orchestrating this scheme from the very beginning. That night, I lay in bed beside him, listening to his even, gentle breathing while my world shattered silently around me. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted with my heart and future, had been deceiving me all along. The next morning, Ethan left for work as if nothing had happened, placing a gentle kiss on my forehead and wishing me a good day at school. His voice was soft, loving, almost tender. If I hadn't overheard the phone call the night before, I would never have suspected a thing. I called in sick for the first time in years. I wasn't physically ill, but I needed space to think, to process the betrayal I had uncovered. I spent the day sifting through our financial documents, attempting to piece together exactly what Ethan had done. The picture that emerged was devastating. Over the past 3 years, he had systematically taken control of nearly everything I owned. The house was in his name alone, even though my father's land had been used as collateral for the mortgage. Our joint accounts were structured so that he had unrestricted access, while I required his approval for large withdrawals. Worse, I found stacks of legal documents I had signed thinking they were routine for our mortgage or insurance. Reading them carefully now, I realized they had stripped me of nearly every legal right to my own property. A week later, Ethan came home carrying a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine. He was unusually attentive, a gesture that now made my stomach twist with suspicion. "Olivia, darling," he said, taking a seat beside me on the couch, "we need to talk." My heart sank, but I tried to steady my voice. "What about?" He took my hands in his face serious, but not unkind. "I've been reflecting on our marriage. I think we both know it's not working anymore." I stared at him, incredulous. "What do you mean?" "Come on, Olivia. We're adults. We've grown apart. We want different things. I think it would be better for both of us if we ended this." "You want a divorce?" I whispered. He nodded, gently rubbing my knuckles with his thumb. "I know this is difficult, but I've already spoken to my lawyer. We can make this quick and painless, no legal fees, no complications." "How generous of you," I said, my voice trembling with barely hidden sarcasm. Ethan didn't acknowledge it. "I've had the papers drawn up. Everything is straightforward. You'll get enough money to start fresh, maybe find an apartment, go back to school if you wish." He set a manila folder on the coffee table. "All you need to do is sign, and we can both move on with our lives." I looked at the folder, my hands shaking. "What about the house?" "Well, it's in my name. And yes, I paid for it. But don't worry," he said smoothly. "The settlement will allow you to settle somewhere nice. And my father's land—" I saw a flicker of hesitation in his expression. "Olivia, we've been through this. The land is collateral for our mortgage. When we sell the house, we settle that debt first, but the settlement will take care of you." His lies were so convincing that if I hadn't overheard that phone call, I might have signed, thinking he was fair. "I need to think about it," I said. His smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, sweetheart. Take all the time you need. But my lawyer says the sooner we file, the simpler it will be for both of us." That night, I read every word of the divorce papers. Unsurprisingly, they were heavily in Ethan's favor. I would receive a modest settlement, enough to rent a small apartment for a year or two if I budgeted carefully. Meanwhile, Ethan would keep the house, cars, investment accounts, and my father's land. According to the documents, the land would be sold to cover marital debt from the mortgage, and any leftover funds would go to him as compensation. I was on the verge of losing everything, including the last piece of my father. The following days blurred together in a haze of fear, anger, and disbelief. I felt heartbroken, betrayed, and terrified, but beneath it all, a fierce determination began to rise. Ethan had underestimated me, and I was not going to let him destroy everything I had without a fight. I took a personal day and drove to the office of Margaret Hayes, a divorce attorney recommended by a trusted colleague. Margaret was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, sharp, practical, and completely unafraid of confrontation. She listened to my story without judgment. "Olivia," she said when I finished recounting everything, "I have to be honest. If you signed all of these documents, we're looking at a very difficult battle. Your husband's lawyers are thorough. They've done their homework." "So I'm just supposed to lose everything?" I asked, fighting back tears. "Not necessarily," Margaret replied firmly. "We need a strategy. Tell me more about your father's land. You said it was the only asset he left you?" I nodded. "It's nothing special, just empty land with an old barn. I don't even know why he bought it. He never used it for anything." Margaret leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Olivia, has that land ever been appraised? Do you know its current value?" I shook my head. "Ethan said it wasn't worth much. That's why he said it was perfect as collateral. The bank wouldn't lose much if we defaulted. I think we need to look into that immediately. And I want to review your father's finances as well. Sometimes there are hidden surprises in cases like this." "Surprises?" I asked, confused. "You'd be amazed," she said. "People often don't know the full extent of what their parents left them. Your father might have been more careful with his money than you realized." I left Margaret's office with a mix of hope and skepticism. My father had been a humble man, working his entire life just to pay the bills and provide for his family. Could there really be something more? 2 weeks later, Margaret called me with news that turned my world upside down. "Olivia, sit down for this. I've been reviewing your father's finances, and there are things you need to know." "What kind of things?" "First," she began, "that land isn't just empty property. County records show there's a natural gas deposit beneath it. An energy company has been trying to acquire mineral rights there for the past 6 years." My heart raced. That means your land could be worth millions, Olivia. But that's not all. I also discovered a trust account your father set up before he passed. It's been dormant because the bank couldn't locate you. Your married name threw them off. "A trust account?" I whispered. "Yes, your father was far more financially savvy than anyone realized. He invested wisely over the years. With compound interest and strategic stock investments, the account is now worth over $2.3 million. I sank into a chair. It was impossible. My father had lived modestly as a maintenance supervisor. He'd never hinted at wealth beyond what was needed to provide for us. A month later, the divorce proceedings officially began. Ethan arrived at the courthouse in Chicago, looking confident, almost cocky, flanked by his expensive legal team carrying briefcases brimming with documents. He assumed this would be an easy division of assets, most of which he believed were already his. During the preliminary hearing, he played the part of the gracious, fair husband. "Your Honor," his lawyer said, "my client is willing to provide Mrs. Carter with a generous settlement despite her minimal contributions to the marital assets. He is acting above and beyond fairness." Ethan nodded, his expression carefully measured, appearing serious and concerned. He was performing his role perfectly, the successful businessman trying to do right by his struggling wife. But I had a secret weapon now. Margaret had advised me to stay silent about the trust and the land's real value until the right moment. She had said, "Let them think they're winning. The revelation will be far more powerful when the time comes." The final hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in late November. Ethan arrived in his best suit, legal team in tow, confident this would be an uncomplicated case. Judge Caroline Hayes presided over the proceedings. Known for her fairness and little patience for deception, she opened the session. You're here to finalize the divorce between Ethan Carter and Olivia Carter. I have reviewed the filings and understand there are some disputed assets. Ethan's lawyer stood. Your Honor, the disputed assets are minimal. The primary marital property is the family home and related investments, most of which Mr. Carter's income funded. Mrs. Carter inherited a small parcel of undeveloped land from her father, which was used as collateral for the mortgage. And your client's position regarding this land? The judge asked. Since it served as collateral, Mr. Carter believes it should be sold to satisfy the mortgage debt, with any remaining proceeds divided appropriately, the lawyer replied. Judge Hayes turned to me. Mrs. Carter, how do you respond? I stood, heart pounding. Your Honor, there are facts about my inheritance that need to be clarified. Margaret stepped beside me. Your Honor, we have additional information regarding Mrs. Carter's inheritance that is highly relevant to these proceedings. Ethan looked confused. His lawyer whispered in his ear, but he shrugged, still confident. Proceed, Judge Hayes said. Margaret opened her briefcase and presented a thick folder. Your Honor, Mrs. Carter's father, William Harper, left her 2 assets upon his passing. First, the land in question, which recent geological surveys show contains a significant natural gas deposit. The property has been appraised at $12.5 million. The color drained from Ethan's face. His lawyer dropped a pen mid-air. Second, Margaret continued, a trust account Mr. Harper established for his daughter's protection. The trust is explicitly separate from marital assets and contains over $2.3 million. Judge Hayes raised an eyebrow. Mr. Carter, were you aware of the value of these assets? His lawyer whispered frantically, but Ethan seemed stunned. I was not aware, Your Honor. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Carter may have been attempting to unlawfully claim these assets. There are documents and recordings showing he knew of his wife's inheritance and deliberately concealed this while persuading her to sign over documents giving him control. That's not true. I had no knowledge of the land's value. Your Honor, we have a recorded phone conversation in which Mr. Carter explicitly discusses plans to acquire his wife's inherited property through the divorce. Judge Hayes looked stern. Mr. Carter, is it true that you attempted to obtain assets legally belonging to your wife? His lawyer immediately stood. Your Honor, we need time to review this new evidence. No, Judge Hayes said firmly. We will settle this today. Mrs. Carter, the trust fund and land are your separate property and will remain entirely in your possession.
She turned to Ethan. Mr. Carter, I am troubled by this evidence. It appears you may have attempted to defraud your wife of her rightful inheritance. Ethan's face went pale. Your Honor, there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, the judge said, was your wife's belief that you married her for love rather than financial gain. Mrs. Carter, you will retain all inherited assets. Additionally, due to evidence of fraud, you will receive half of all marital assets accumulated during the marriage. Ethan's jaw dropped. The prenup. It is void due to fraud and failure to disclose material facts, Judge Hayes stated. Mrs. Carter, you will receive half of the house, half of the investment accounts, and half of all other marital assets.
I sat in stunned silence as Margaret squeezed my hand. Ethan looked as though he might be physically sick. Furthermore, Judge Hayes continued, Mr. Carter will pay Mrs. Carter's legal fees and court costs.
As we exited the courthouse, the crisp Chicago morning air felt like a cleansing force. Ethan caught up to me in the parking lot, his face a mixture of desperation, anger, and disbelief. Olivia, we need to talk. This is all a huge misunderstanding, he said, his voice shaky but pleading. I turned to face him, for the first time in 3 years, feeling fully in control. No, Ethan, the misunderstanding was mine. I thought you loved me. I did love you. I still do. We can fix this. I made mistakes, he stammered, reaching out to touch my arm. I pulled away sharply. Ethan,
For 3 years, you made me feel worthless. You convinced me that no one would want a simple teacher from a modest family. You enjoyed feeling superior. You thrived on controlling me. That is not love." He looked frantic. "Olivia, you're wrong. I I see now that I was wrong about everything, about your father, about you, about what really matters in life." I took a deep breath and stepped toward my car, then paused and turned back. "Oh, and Ethan, that ordinary, boring teacher you married, she's worth more than you'll ever be. And I'm not talking about money." I didn't feel anger anymore, only calm resolve. He had taught me a critical lesson. I had been seeking validation from the wrong person. I had been proving I was worthy of love, when in truth, I already was. My father had known this all along. He had worked hard, saved diligently, and planned carefully for my future. Not because he thought I was weak, but because he knew I was strong enough to handle life's challenges. Margaret had explained it to me gently. "Your father set up that trust to protect you, Olivia. He knew that any spouse might try to take advantage of you. The trust can only be accessed by you after your 30th birthday or in the event of a divorce. Your husband has no claim to it." I whispered to myself, overwhelmed with gratitude. He had protected me even after his passing. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ethan had married me thinking I was naive, a poor, obedient teacher. Instead, he had wed the daughter of a man who had spent decades quietly building wealth and ensuring his family's security. I smiled softly, feeling an immense sense of relief. Sometimes the people who underestimate us provide the greatest motivation, not to prove them wrong, but to finally realize our own worth.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to this channel. Your supports means everything.